Hey there, I'm Mr. Terry. I'm a high school history teacher. Welcome back to another History Teacher Reacts video. All right, back with some more Fat Electrician. He keeps putting out great videos. I have not seen one I haven't liked. It looks like we got a great story once again. So this video is titled, The Limping Lady, Deadliest Spy of World War II, Virginia Hall. This is awesome. I do not know who this character is, so I'm going to be learning a lot, and I'm happy that you could come join me on this. And you know I'm going to be talking about the history whenever I can. All right, the original video is down below. Make sure you gave that video a like. Be sure to subscribe to his channel. And thanks again to Fat Electrician for supporting my channel. Go get his merch. All right, let's get started. All right, like learning about World War II always? I like to learn about spies. Let's go. Who is she?
I don't have a daughter, but if I did, this is who I would want her to look up to.
All right.
Today we're talking about Virginia Hall, aka the Limping Lady, probably the most effective American spy of World War II, and she managed to do that with one leg. But first, a word from our sponsors. This video is brought to you by Ridge Wallet. If you've been
no
on
one
the internet
suggests
decade,
or no one
you know what Ridge
suspects.
Wallet is. I'm not going to waste your time. Ridge hired me to tell you to buy your dad a Ridge Wallet for Christmas. If your dad's anything like mine, his wallet probably looks like a Gutenberg Bible and his back hurts, and nobody has ever pointed out to this poor guy that, hey, maybe your back hurts because every time you sit down, you've got a phone book underneath one butt cheek and you look like you're the Leaning Tower of Pisa inside of a chair. So head over to ridge.com/TFE and shop the holiday sale. You're going to save up to 30%, and when you use my link,
George Costanza, if anyone knows the reference.
And a chance to win a $4,000 bundle from Ridge. Let's get back to the video. All right, Virginia Hall, born in 1906 in Baltimore. She grew up in a really wealthy family and was a complete tomboy the entire time, and her father absolutely loved it. He taught her how to hunt, and he completely endorsed her being not very ladylike all of the time. In addition to being a
love that. You gotta understand that time period is still very much about gender stereotypes. A lot of that didn't start to break down until, you know, women were bundled into the American Civil Rights Movement. Yeah, it was very much, you're going to be this and this and this. So quite progressive of them, actually.
Boy, she was also highly intelligent, graduating from high school with ease and getting accepted into the top female colleges in the country.
Man, look at those accolades. Look at this. Basketball team. Captain ball team? What's captain ball? Hockey team. Drama. Store manager. Honor roll. Class president. Class prophet? Whoa, you see the bottom one? Second to bottom? Class prophet? What is that? Dude, I need to go to school back in the 20s.
Her mother, on the other hand, had different plans because immediately after high school, she expected Virginia to get married to a young man from another wealthy family in the area so they could combine their family businesses. Yeah. So she gets engaged to this guy at 18 years old. Fast forward 1 year, she's 19 years old, and she keeps catching her fiance cheating on her, so she calls off the engagement and runs off to college despite her mother's wishes. Yeah, this was an era where very few women are going to college. If you were upper class woman, you usually had the ability, you know, you're going to meet a lot of upper class men with that kind of idea that if you're coming from marrying into an upper class family, that man is going to be able to provide for the rest of the family. He's going to have an upper, you know, class job, probably because he was able to get a college education. At this time, this is still an era of child labor and people being stuck in cycles of poverty. This is kind of one of the negative effects that came out of the Second Industrial Revolution. So her stepping into this role here is actually very forward for a young woman at this time. Immediately attends the top 2 female colleges in the country, Radcliffe and Barnard, which are the equivalent of Harvard and Columbia. She studies economics and foreign languages, deciding that she wants to become an American diplomat. She wants to live in an embassy and represent the United States of America. However, this is the 1920s, and the odds of a female landing that job are slim to none, but she wants to maximize her chances, so she learns as many foreign languages as possible. Dude, she's perfectly set up for to be a spy. German, Italian, and French, and finishes college abroad, studying in Germany, France, and Austria. While finishing college in Europe in the late 1920s, she would bear witness to the birth of fascism and the rise of the Nazi Party and have a better understanding of how dangerous that ideology was than 99% of Americans. She would return home in 19... So she must have been into the 30s there, because Nazi Party took power, started to take power in 1932. 29, a few months after that, was than 99% of Americans. She would return home in 1929. A few months after that, the stock market would crash, the Great Depression would start, and her father, a wealthy business owner, would lose almost everything, and the increased stress would lead to him having a heart attack and dying. This made Virginia even more determined to accomplish her goal of becoming an American diplomat, so she got a job working for the U.S. Embassy in Poland as a secretary. She worked there for several years, and every year she would apply for a promotion to become a U.S. diplomat, and every year something went wrong.
I'm thinking, man, she was a diplomat in Poland come September 1st, 1939, the invasion of Poland. She would have had a front row ticket to the beginning of World War II.
First year, they lost her application. The second year, her application made it through because she delivered it herself, and she was a shoo-in. She could speak 4 languages. She was a college graduate. She was highly intelligent, well-spoken. So she passed the application portion of the hiring process and had to have an in-person interview. And conveniently, they accidentally told her the wrong place and the wrong time to be, so she got disqualified again. Realizing,
dude, that sounds like that the Office episode where Jim's pranking Dwight and sends him on like a fake CIA mission.
That embassy had it out for her and was not about to let a woman become a diplomat, she transferred to a different embassy in Turkey. So now it's 1933. She's living in Turkey. She's working as a receptionist at the embassy still, and she's just waiting for that next opportunity to apply to become a diplomat. One of her hobbies at this point in time is to go out hunting with the shotgun that her father had bought for her when she was a kid. It's an irregular hobby for a woman, but Virginia's an irregular type of woman. So she goes out hunting with her friends one day, and they're hunting for snipes, which if you don't know is this little tiny bird. Apparently they're really hard to hit, and this is where the term sniper comes from. Regardless, at one point she has to hop over a fence. She forgot to turn the safety on her shotgun and accidentally blew her own foot off. Luckily her friends were there and they managed to pick her up, get her to the hospital in time to save her life. While she's in the hospital recovering, she would end up getting gangrene, which is a very, very serious type of infection, especially back then in the 1930s, because antibiotics weren't going to be widely used or available for another decade. And I mean, the doctors back then are basically just grunts with scalpels, so they come over to Virginia. They're like, hey, here's the deal. You're going to die. Amputee. There's one chance that we can save you. Basically, my medical opinion is your leg is pissed off and it's trying to kill you. Yeah. My strategy is I'm going to kill it first. I'm going to cut it off and throw it away. So, by
the way, this is the exact reason why until antibiotics and stuff, excuse my dog if you can hear him, he got a new pig toy. And he just decided to start playing while I'm doing my video. Anyway, but yeah, it's also why through most of human history, why more people died from injuries, from actual deadly, instant death type of things. If you got an infection like this, like gangrene, you're going to die or you're going to lose your leg. That's why amputees are so common when you look at something like the Civil War, when that stuff was still cutting edge and not mass produced. And yeah, so this is just par for the course. This is very normal.
So that's what they do. She gets amputated from the knee down. Later in her life, she would admit that while she was recovering in the hospital, her father had come to her in a dream and told her that she had to get through this because she had important work to do. So that's what she does. She makes a full recovery, gets a wooden prosthetic, learns how to walk again, and goes right back to trying to be an American diplomat. However, you got to remember, she's a complete tomboy, and what's the first thing a dude does when he gets a new car, a new set of wheels, a new gun? He always gives it a name, right?
Oh.
Right. Virginia named her wooden leg Cuthbert.
Let's go.
So she goes back to work and continues trying to become a diplomat. However, now they have a legitimate reason to not let her become one. They don't need to lose her application. They don't need to give her the wrong dates and the wrong times anymore, because apparently there was a pre-established rule that amputees were not allowed to become diplomats. Why? I have no idea, but it turns out that Virginia has now both literally and figuratively shot herself in the foot.
Gosh, it's gonna get that. Why do you think that was? Why do you think they saw that like amputees? Did they think they would, I don't know, didn't put on a good presence? Did they feel like they would be treated differently? Do you think that's like an unwritten rule today? For something like that? I don't know. Interesting.
Virginia, being the badass that she is, though, isn't about to take no for an answer, so she begins lobbying to have the rules changed altogether. She doesn't have much success. Fast forward 1940, Germany invades France, and Virginia is like, fuck it, I'm gonna go be an ambulance driver and help out the French because I hate Nazis. And that's exactly what she does. Virginia, a 35-year-old woman that was physically unfit to be an American diplomat where she would have to sit in an office and talk to people, is now on her way to France to be an ambulance driver in an active war zone. So she's an ambulance driver all throughout the Battle Battle of Paris, and she is one of, if not the first Americans to actually stand up and fight against the Nazis. After France falls, she has to flee, so she hops on a train and makes her way over to Spain. While she's at the train station, she meets a British intel officer, and she tells him her story. This guy is so impressed that he's like, hey, take this phone number, call my friend. He can probably help find you a job over in England if that's where you want to go. So she calls the number looking for a job, and that number puts her in contact with a man by the name of Nicholas Boddington, one of the head guys of the newly formed British SOE. SOE standing for Special Operations Executive, which is just the new spin-off of Great Britain's Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, aka their equivalent of the CIA. So she talks to them.
We do whatever we want and have to answer to nobody organization.
They pretty much immediately want her to be a spy. She speaks German, she speaks French, she's lived in France, she understands the culture, and most importantly of all, she's an American. And this is important because that means she can use her actual American identity and all her real documentation to give to the Germans to get into France, posing as a journalist. Virginia immediately agrees and goes into training for the next 6 months, learning everything there is to know about espionage, or at least as much as she can in that amount of time. Fast forward 6 months later, mid-1941, Virginia Hall, the spy, gets dropped off in Vichy, France. Which, if you don't know, at this point in time, France
is the part that didn't get taken
There's
over.
occupied France, and then there's unoccupied France, also referred to as Vichy France. Now, Vichy France is technically, supposedly free, but pretty much everybody knows that it's a puppet state for the Nazis at this point. And Hall,
so, I mean, really, the Nazis only had to take, once they took Paris, it was over, right? That's always been kind of the idea. That was the German idea in World War I, take Paris and it's over. And it's kind of true. If Paris falls, that's the infrastructure of France. And now you can see what that actually looks like. You take that over, you've basically taken over France. But yeah, Vichy France was totally a puppet state.
Hall's job is to go in there posing as a journalist for the New York Post, build a spy network, and do anything she can to fuck with the Nazis. Okay, and just so we're on the same page, this isn't like the movies where she has like instructions to go meet with some guy that's her connection and she like integrates with this already existing spy network. No, she was the first spy to go in. She had to go in and build the network from scratch. They literally took Hall, a 35-year-old woman with a wooden leg, gave her some money and some cyanide pills in case she got caught, sent her into enemy help.
Cyanide pills are given to spies when they are going to be, if they think they're going to be caught and that the punishment's going to be death, it's poison. You poison yourself.
Territory and was like, fucking cyanide pills in case she got caught, sent her into enemy held territory and was like, fucking figure it out. So Hall shows up in Lyon, France, and she doesn't even have anywhere to stay. All the hotel rooms are full, all the houses are rented. So many people have been displaced from the war, there's nowhere for her to stay. So when she first gets to France, she ends up living with a bunch of nuns at first, and she like had a curfew, the whole 9 yards. Then after a couple weeks, she finally gets a hotel room, and that's where she sets up her headquarters and makes her first contact. She goes straight to the U.S. Embassy and tries to get their help. And the head of the U.S. Embassy is like, absolutely not. America's neutral. We want nothing to do with it. But the second in command of the American Embassy pulls her aside and he's like, yes, I'm willing to help. And this is really important because this is the only way she's going to...
By the way, pre-Pearl Harbor, and you're like, well, that's Japan, right? Well, the United States, what ends up happening? Pearl Harbor happens, right? And United States declares war on Japan. Now, right after that, like day after, in making... actual due on their the alliance that Germany had. Germany will declare war on the United States. So that's how that gets then tied into the United States and Germany. So still got to wait. It's got to be not till December 1941.
To be able to communicate with London. You see, because it's an embassy, they have a diplomatic bag, so it's going to be mail that's not being screened by the Nazis before it goes out. So if this guy's willing to slip her messages to London into the diplomatic bag, it's going to be the only way that she's going to be able to get communication outside of France. So she gets it done. She establishes a connection. She now has a way to communicate with the outside world. On to the next order of business. Go see the gynecologist. Not for her, for the Nazis. You see, she has a two-pronged attack method that she's going to use to wreak havoc on the German ranks.
Oh, what do we got?
Step A, recruit a gynecologist. Step B, recruit a brothel owner. All right, so here's
a brothel owner?
She gets this gynecologist to start working with her by the name of Jean Rosette, and then she gets this brothel owner by the name of Germaine Garand to start working with her. And the plan she works out is the brothel owner is going to send all of his
women.
employees to this particular gynecologist, and he's going to sort out the ones that do not have STDs and the ones that do have STDs, and he's not going to treat them, but he's going to give them a clean bill of health, and then the brothel owner is only going to let those ones sleep with the Nazis. So already Hall is establishing herself.
Is this like, would this be considered biological warfare?
Is a diabolical mastermind. I mean, she's conducting biological warfare, weapons of ass destruction, if you will. All the other spies are out here worried about intercepting mail and sending secret messages, and she's over here destroying the German ranks from the inside out and making them enjoy it while she does it. And the scary part is she's just getting warmed up.
And literally infecting them from the inside out,
now
literally.
She starts sending messages back to London through that diplomatic bag, asking for supply drops in the countryside, and she gets them. They're dropping off guns, explosives, and she's turning around giving that to these guerrilla fighters that are just doing anything they can to fight the Germans, and she's also getting money to bribe officials and heroin. Yeah, the second prong of her prostitute attack on the German ranks is that after the employees have already given the Germans an STD, they are then also going to attempt to get them addicted to heroin.
Oh my God.
I mean, the Germans get all this credit for developing their brilliant blitzkrieg tactic during World War II, which translates to lightning war. I'm going to go ahead with whatever authority I have, and I'm going to dub this the brothel krieg tactic in honor of Virginia Hall, because this is brilliant. So this keeps going for months and months, and she develops more and more connections and builds this enormous spy network that is officially given the code name Heckler. And every month, more and more spies are coming in, and she's helping them get set up, and these new spies know how to send wireless transmissions, so now there's other ways of getting messages outside of France, but the problem is these wireless transmissions can get tracked by the Nazis, and a lot of these new spies are getting caught that way. So then fast forward October 1941, all the other spies, there's like 12 other ones in the area right now, and they decide they're going to have a big meeting. Basically, they're coming up with an excuse to get together and have a party and actually talk about all the cool stuff they've been doing, which is a huge mistake for a spy, so Virginia avoids it. Sure enough, all 12 spies get busted and captured, and this was known as the Marseille Mousetrap, where the German Gestapo captured 12 spies all at once. They captured all the wireless operators, and again, Virginia is basically the only spy on the ground, and she is the only spy still capable of getting a message out to London. So she sends a message out to London, basically saying that everybody else has been captured, nobody else is going to be able to communicate except for her. In addition to that, the German Gestapo also now know what she looks like and have drawings of her, and they know that she walks with a limp, and they're starting to call her the Limping Lady. So
I was going to say, like, that's the one thing about her. You wouldn't think she would be some like spy or something, but if you did, she's going to be easy to identify that way. Maybe that's why you don't do it as diplomats or spies. But anyway, all right, Kay, how is she going to get out of this?
So she is effectively #1 on the Gestapo's most wanted list, and leading the Gestapo in Lyon at this point in time is Klaus Barbie, one of the most brutal Nazis of World War II.
Now, I haven't really seen, I mean, he hasn't really said much about like spy activities. We see this infiltration of biological warfare on the level of something you'd think like the Mongol Empire would have, you know, thought up. But interested to know what like information she was able to convey and learn.
And he is quoted as saying, "I would do anything to find that limping Canadian bitch," end quote. He believed that she had to be Canadian because he didn't think any American could speak French so fluently. London then responds by saying, "Hey, that's terrible, A, but also, go ahead and flee, get out of the country, they're gonna find you. They know what you look like, they know that you walk with a limp, and every time you take a step with your hollow wooden leg, there is a distinct wood noise. They're gonna catch you." Obviously, I'm paraphrasing, but to this, Virginia basically said, "Hold my leg and watch this shit." Rather than flee, she decides that she's going to orchestrate a jailbreak of the other 12 spies that have been captured. But she's playing it on hardcore mode because the Germans know that they're looking for the Limping Lady, and every time she takes a step with her hollow wooden leg, it makes a wood noise. And then her plot armor activates and divine intervention kicks in, because supplies into France are so low and so scarce that they're no longer getting rubber and leather to make shoes out of anymore, and people have to start carving their shoes shoes out of wood, and all of a sudden, everybody's
Everyone's
walking
Dutch.
around making wood
Everyone's
noises,
Dutch.
completely disguising her movements.
Yes.
So rather than fleeing the country, she tracks down the prison that the 12 spies are being held at, then finds somebody that works at the prison, convinces them to get her a roster of the prisoners, uses that to track down a different, completely unrelated prisoner's wife on the outside, befriend her, and convince her to help her. Virginia, not wanting to be seen herself because they know what she looks like, decides that she's going to have this other prisoner's wife start smuggling in supplies to the 12 spies and, by extent, this woman's husband. Like they're baking handcuff keys and screwdrivers into cakes and shit to smuggle these supplies in. And this goes so well that she decides she's really going to start showing off. She's going to try to smuggle in an entire wireless set into the prisoners. And the wireless set is like the size of a briefcase. So she gets a 70-year-old priest that's a double amputee from World War I to smuggle this briefcase in by sitting on it in his wheelchair. And he ends up giving it to the other spies that actually know how to use the equipment.
Okay, I'm becoming distrustful of all the amputees. Now every amputee that you might see, assume they are a spy for someone or were a spy.
The thing, the spies on the inside needed a really big...
I feel like I haven't had anything to add in a while. I'm like captivated by this story, so you have to apologize that if you're looking for more content that way. But yeah.
To make this thing work. So they ran a wire from their cell into this like wireless setup outside across the yard and attached it to the boundary fence using the entire fence as an antenna, and somehow never got caught. So now the spies are transmitting messages from inside the prison directly to London. So fast forward like a month, Virginia has smuggled these guys everything they need to be able to break out from the inside, and once they get outside the boundary fence, she is going to be there to pick them up, get them to a safe house, and smuggle them out of the country. Everything is completely arranged. Then on the day...
It sounds like just... Is anything like this in like Sun Tzu Art of War? The history of like espionage and stuff is... It really is fascinating. World War II, you know, this is when technology was really being used for espionage. I mean, it's not in World War I because these are now wars that, well, now it's telephones, but once you started to have like telegraphs, it was like this double-edged sword, and radio as well, because it's like you can instantly communicate very well, and that's been a game changer in wars. American Civil War, but you know, one of the reasons the North won was because they had that extensive telegraph network, and that was literally hooked up to like basically the Oval Office for Lincoln. But then it also becomes hard to protect that because that stuff gets out there. Look at like World War I, you get like Zimmerman telegram, which the British intercepted, you know, from Germany to Mexico, and you have to protect those secrets. And then World War II, you're going to have Enigma and these other codes. Everyone was using codes to be able to hide their messages, and espionage in so many ways was like the thing that decides the war. I mean, they said from breaking the Enigma code that the British ended up saving a whole bunch of lives because they were tipped off on other things, tipped off on German movements. And then same thing when with like the United States, and they were able to protect a lot of their codes because there's a Navajo code, which was something that basically nobody could break in Japan. But yeah, the war of intelligence is as important as like the war on the ground.
At the jailbreak, Virginia makes sure that somebody else tries to smuggle in a bunch of booze to the prisoners, knowing that they would get caught and that the guards would end up drinking all the alcohol that night, making it easier for the spies to slip away. Which is exactly what happens.
Get them drunk.
All the guards are drinking, partying, having a good time, and while that's going on, the spies are utilizing the handcuff keys and all the tools Virginia smuggled in to escape. They run across the yard under the cover of night, scale the perimeter fence, and waiting there is Virginia, who immediately takes them to a safe house. They hide for 2 weeks straight while the entire Gestapo is searching everywhere for them, and then she smuggles them out of the country. Okay, fast forward a month. It's November 1942. She just staged that huge jailbreak. All the Germans are looking for her, and now the Gestapo has brought in an additional 500 men, all with the sole purpose of finding the Limping lady. It is at this moment Virginia decides it's probably time to leave. But with 500 new Gestapo all looking for a woman with a limp, she can't take any of the normal ways out of the country, so the only method she has to escape is to take the Pyrenees Freedom Trail, a 50-mile hike through the Pyrenees Mountains to cross the border between France and Spain. And she has to do it in November, in the coldest winter for France in over 200 years.
Oh my God.
It is a 3 to 4 day
I did not know that. I actually didn't know that part of climatology, the history of climatology, and that they had the coldest winter happened to be during World War II. I mean, we hear about people, you know, freezing, of course, with like, you know, the Germans invading Russia, but
for people doing it for fun, not in the middle of winter, and Virginia manages to do it in 2 days with a wooden leg. During her hike, she was communicating with London via radio, not like secret spy radio, just normal radio transmissions. It wasn't going to blow her cover. She was already blown and she was leaving anyways, so it didn't really matter. And she would tell London that Cuthbert was giving her issues because I'm sure, as you can imagine, hiking with a wooden leg would get pretty tiresome after a while.
Would appear so, wouldn't it?
To which London, not knowing who Cuthbert was, responded by saying, if Cuthbert is giving you problems, have him eliminated.
Take him out.
Take him out.
So she crosses the border into Spain after 2 days, complete badass. She has escaped the Nazis, and 48 hours after she leaves Lyon, her entire hotel room gets ransacked because the Germans finally figured out who she was, and she had escaped just in the nick of time. And then she promptly gets arrested by Spanish authorities for illegal immigration. So then she has to get a message out to London, out to America.
Now, Spain's supposed to be neutral in this war, but we know who they sympathize with.
Finally come for illegal immigration. So then she has to get a message out to London, out to America. They finally come, bail her out. She goes back to London working with the SOE, and she's like, okay, well, cool, send me back in. And they're like, no, your cover's blown. You've done all you're gonna do. That's it for you. We're not gonna let you do
give her a
anything
desk
else
job
as far as like actively working undercover goes. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but Virginia Hall basically says, okay, well, peace out, nerds. I'm gonna go work with the Americans. She goes over to America, goes to the OSS, the direct predecessor of the CIA, and is like, hey, I'm more experienced than any spy you guys have. Put me in, coach.
Has he said a year yet? I want to make sure. Like, is this United States not involved yet?
To which the OSS is like, sure, why not? And they give her a shot. This time, Virginia makes sure that she takes a wireless transmitting class, though, so now she can also send the wireless transmitting signals. She doesn't want to be the only spy not able to,
Makes sense.
last time. So she does that. She then realizes that she's going to have to pretend to be a much older woman. This would help disguise her limp, and it would help change her face so that they didn't know what she looked like anymore. So she goes to a professional Hollywood makeup artist, learns how to do makeup to look like a really old woman, and then she goes to a dentist in London that grinds all her teeth down so she looks like she has terrible teeth like a French peasant would. The OSS then sneaks her back into France on a PT boat and drops her off completely by herself again. And from there, she just starts doing it all over again. She develops a huge spy network again. This time, she's posing as an elderly milkmaid by day and a spy master by night. At this point in time, the French resistance had all kinds of guerrilla fighters, but they were basically just running around blowing shit up, being as big of a nuisance as they possibly could, and weren't being strategic about it at all.
Yeah, a lot of people forget about the resistance movement that continued in France after the surrender of France. Like, it kept going on the whole time. That was a huge nuisance that the Germans had to deal with, and trying to buy time for, you know, hopefully they thought a takeover. You've got government in exile at this time. So yeah, people kept fighting, and this network just kept trying to do what they did in guerrilla warfare, essentially.
So over the course of the next year and a half, Virginia set out to establish a chain of command and actually get them to work together and coordinate attacks and efforts. By 1944, she had amassed an entire army. She had 3 battalions, 1,500 guerrilla fighters that she was coordinating attacks against the Germans with from the inside, all while transmitting signals to the Americans to have them drop off supplies like guns and explosives to continue fighting with. She would then be notified that in June of 1944, D-Day was going to happen, and in the weeks leading up to it, she used her guerrilla army to coordinate and sabotage major highways, railroads, communication lines, and bridges, preventing the Germans from reinforcing the right beaches in a timely fashion.
And so that makes perfect sense, though, that she would be one of the most useful assets you have of somebody in the ground. The D-Day invasion, the communication, the logistics of it is something else that has to be talked about more, because of how much coordination it took. It took an incredible amount of coordination. They had to again, be able to get behind enemy lines. And I'm not just talking about putting paratroopers behind like they did, but have to work with the resistance movement that's going on in France as well. And she could be a great connection with that. But you have to have stuff behind enemy lines, otherwise this thing was going to fail. And if you remember, the Americans and the British were not, to be honest, super confident that D-Day was going to work. They, had hoped, but they were very much prepared for failure in this.
Potentially change.
Look, if you're interested in learning more about that, Look at Eisenhower's letter he drafted that was to be sent when D-Day failed. He had it drafted, ready to go to the press, basically saying, you know, don't blame the soldiers. You could blame me, that kind of stuff. It's a really interesting, quick read.
The entire course of D-Day. And somewhere around this time frame, the OSS would send in a reinforcement to help Virginia out, a young Polish operative by the name of Paul Giat. He parachuted into theater, too late to have any real influence on the operation, but him and Virginia would end up falling in love. After the war, they would both move back home to America, where Paul would get his citizenship, and they would both begin their careers working for the newly found CIA. They would then go on to lead a specialized task force monitoring communism in the Eastern Bloc of Europe. Yeah, this incredible story literally ends with two spies falling in love and going out on missions together. In 1945, President Truman...
Why is this not a movie? Directors, are you watching? You looking? People love World War II history. Virginia Hall, she needs a movie. Who should play her? Ooh. Let me know down below.
I wanted to give Virginia the Distinguished Service Cross, the highest honor a civilian could receive, because technically spies weren't in the military, so they're ineligible for the Medal of Honor. But President Truman wanted to give this to her in a humongous ceremony, tell her story, and make her basically an international hero and celebrity. Virginia, however, declined that offer because she didn't want her cover blown. She still wanted to be operational and capable of helping the United States and the world if she was needed.
Spying.
She became the only female civilian of World War II to be awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, and was awarded to her by General William Donovan, and by her own request, it was awarded in front of only one witness, her mom. Her future husband and fiance, Paul, wasn't there because she didn't think her mother would approve. This woman was behind enemy lines fighting against the Nazis for all of World War II, the entire thing, longer than probably any other American, and she's still scared of the opinions of mom. And that's it. Virginia and Paul would live happily ever after. They retired at 60 years old, and Virginia would pass away at the age of 76 in 1982. And nobody knew anything about this until they read her obituary. She never gave an interview. She never wrote a memoir.
Dude,
she never said a single thing. And later in life, when she was asked why she never talked about it, she said, and I quote, "Too many of my friends died for talking too much." Which I think we can all agree is gangster as fuck. So in conclusion, this is a story of Virginia Hall, the deadliest spy of World War II. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang, out.
Yeah, baby. Final thoughts. All right, Ridley Scott, you want to make amends for the Napoleon movie? Let's get a movie of Virginia Hall. Cast it right, write it right, regain your honor. Give this woman a movie. Oh, what a great story. And all these stories that are going to be so fun to tell when I get opportunities to tell my students in class, you know, about these. These are all the ones that we need to hear about. Dude, you know what just came to my mind too? This needs to be a Sabaton song. Okay, Sabaton, Joachim, all y'all in the band. Okay, let's get a Virginia Hall song. Okay, let's get another World War II album going. Look at Fat Electrician stories. You got a wealth of topics to be able to make some awesome metal songs. Get on that. All right, thanks again, Fat Electrician, being so cool and putting out great videos. Again, this video was linked down below. Make sure you watch all of his other videos. And with that, we'll see y'all next time. Bye.